All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. Today is Thursday, January 23rd of 2025 here. And looking ahead, we have an 11-game NHL main slate as well as an 8-game NBA main slate. So it should be a fun day of DFS. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew, one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS-related questions. Get your questions in one of three ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second, post it live in the YouTube chat. Third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there's a link in the description of this video. You also get access to our similar channels, individual sport channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim team. Can't say enough good things about the Discord. But with that said, we do this show Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then we do this show on Saturdays, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Tune in any one of those days, get your questions answered. And we do have some questions queued up here, so we will get SaberSim up and we will get started with those. But if anybody has a question, now is always a good time to get it in the queue here. So first question, I was going back and forth with somebody in support a little bit, said, Andrew, can you do an office hours demo going to a past MLB Showdown that you have not played, create contest sims, build lineups, run sims, then most importantly, somehow show the resulting ROI, cash weight, win rates that are not identical? Yeah, absolutely. So let's just go back to a slate from the MLB regular season here. And there's like a little bit of context here with the user, which I'll discuss briefly as we go down. But let's say I go back September 4th, MLB. Notice, none of these are starred. I didn't play any of these. So I go to this slate and it loads into the contest tab, right? No entries file here. So I'm going to create a manual contest sim. And I'm going to use the non-live option here. So field lineups, SaberSim ownership, leave all the rest the same. Click create. Make 2 adjustments to projections and then kick off the build, right? So right now we are in a, old MLB Showdown slate. We have a custom contest sim, and then we are running a build for this. This is not going to use live data, just so you guys know. Since Showdowns, you can't late swap. We basically don't have, we turned off the ability to use live data. So like if you go to the contest tab, there's not going to be a gear icon in the field lineups column that says, use live fields or use live sims, because you basically can never do that. And so we just leave that off. That way live data isn't available. So anytime you're back testing old, MLB Showdown slates specifically, you're always using pre-slate data. If you are doing MLB Classic, it's going to be a little bit different. You are going to have to turn those toggles off in order to not use the live data, since it is a late swap available slate. If late swap is available, the toggles are available, is probably how you should think about it. So now I'm in post build here. I'm going to run the contest sim. And contest sim finishes, it processes, right? I go down here to my contest sim results. You got to, manually change it, right? If you didn't play this slate, go into your sims. And then, if you wanted to sort by ROI, but let's say, I just want to see the results, right? Okay. So I go in, I switch to compact mode. I close the projections, right? I have all these columns, right? Well, what if I don't care about these, right? What if I don't care about all these Saber scores? And maybe I don't care about the percentiles. And I just care about my information, right? So then what I could do here is I could come in and check these. And then that'll be just for the contest sim that I ran here, right? And then I click apply. And then now I see all this information, right? So I could expand these columns out, if I want to. It does get like a little long, but it is like a way you can do it, right? So now I can see the lineup, salaries, projection, actual scores of the lineups. This is the pre-slate ROIs, right? So if I wanted to sort by actual, I can come in here and see what the ROIs look like of the lineups compared to their actual scores, right? And I get like, jump back and forth here. So there's a number of ways to do that, but this is how you do it, right? So probably missing a step of like editing some columns, moving some things around here, but it should all be available when you right click edit columns, and then kind of adjust it from there. So that's what I'd be doing if I'm trying to see, ROIs in compact mode for those past slates. In detailed mode, right, I come back here, I'm looking at the lineups like this. All I need to do is just scroll down here in this summary stats, and then that information is going to be available without me doing anything with columns or anything like that. So in this, 2-line format detailed mode, I just scroll down and I can see the summary statistics under each lineup. But if you're trying to look at it at a little bit more of a glance in compact, you're going to have to adjust some columns. All right, good stuff there. I'm going to jump back to present time here and come back to January. It is the 23rd. Go to NBA. Go to this 8-game main slate. Go to 500 lineups, couple adjustments. Kick off some lineups while we read off this next question. All right, next question. Can you briefly explain the importance of having a good SIM ROI for review? Seems like most of the winners have horrible SIM ROI when I review the slates. Yeah, for sure. So, common question. I think we answered this like a little bit earlier in the week as well, but happy to touch on it again here. So, do negative SIM ROI lineups win contests? Like, yeah, absolutely, right? We go and we look at, any past contest, right? We can just do this. So let's go to yesterday, NBA. Go to contests, and let's just go and review like the $5 150 max, right? Seems like this was the flagship for yesterday. It's kind of a big contest, so let this load. We'll go to leaderboard. So this contest, positive SIM ROI won 23%. Okay, let's go look at a different one. Let's try, high stakes. Okay, let's go to leaderboard. Okay, so negative SIM ROI lineup wins this contest, right? Okay, cool. So this one would be a good opportunity for us to look at this. All right, so we look at this lineup, right? Negative 9.9 SIM ROI. So what does that actually mean in terms of rates here, right? So if you look at this lineup has a win rate of 0.21, and the lineup has a cashing rate of 20.5. So just because the lineup is negative SIM ROI, what does that mean, right? Well, what is SIM ROI even doing, right? So imagine we're playing, a $1 single entry. Okay, we're back. Imagine we're playing like a $1 single entry contest, right? Okay, and we're running it through the contest sim. So we're going to contest sim it 100,000 times. So what does that mean? So that means that the lineup is going to incur $100,000 in entry fees, since it's going to be 1 times 100,000, right? So what we're doing here is, and this might not even be like the best way to show it. So what we're doing, right, is SIM ROI. It's adding up all the money the lineup won. So it's winnings, and then it's dividing it by entry fees, right? So what happens here is if we're doing a $1 single entry and we're doing 100K sims, right? So that means in the denominator, so I'm just going to put numerator, in the denominator, which is like the bottom section, right? This is going to be 100,000. 100,000 here, right? And I'll just make it look like this. So what is this top number? So how we get the top number is we're adding up all of the lineup's winnings across the 100K sims. We are running it and we're adding it up and we're adding it up and we're adding it up, right? When a lineup is, negative 9.9, I'm just going to round like to 10, right? Negative 9.9 SIM ROI. That means that the lineup won about $91,000, right? Because if we, we put this in here and we do 91,000 divided by 100,000, we get 0.91. You do 1 minus 0.91. And then like this is your, 9% SIM ROI, but it's negative, right? Because we basically take, the 0.91 minus 1, and this would effectively be negative. So it should have looked like this, 0.91 minus 1. And then this how you get negative 9.9, negative 9% SIM ROI, right? I'm rounding a little bit here. So this lineup still won, $91,000 in the contest sim. But so that means that it does win sometimes, right? It does cash often, right? And you can see that in the results, right? Win rate 0.21, cash rate 20%. So it's not to say the lineup never wins. It's not saying the lineup never cashes. But what we're saying is that when we played this lineup out 100,000 times over the long term, the lineup ended up losing money. So, you could look at DFS like short term, or you could look at DFS long term, right? We like to look at it long term. We want you to not only win once, we want you to win twice. We want you to win 3 times, right? We want you to start stacking those wins and be a profitable player over the long term, right? When you're a profitable player over the long term, you're not going to just have one hit and, that's your, highlight of your career. You're going to have multiple, right? You're going to have these repeat wins. We're trying to help our users get repeat wins, right? When you are a positive, expectation when you have a positive ROI expectation, the idea here is that if you play enough slates and if you spread out your bankroll and you play the best contest, you will win over the long term, and the wins will continue to come over time. So that's kind of the idea behind having a positive SIM ROI. And just because you see negative SIM ROI lineups win, they are expected to win some amount of the time in the sims, right? Unless they have a negative 100% SIM ROI, that means they never cash. That means they never win. If it's any number, less than that or greater than that, then, there is some amount of time that the lineup wins, and like, that's okay, right? So that's the idea with like positive SIM ROI, negative SIM ROI in contest results. All right, next question. Do you recommend submitting top lineups from SaberSim based on rank or projected score? I mainly play FanDuel Fantasy at this time, NFL, NBA, and NHL. Really quick, Jerry said, appreciate the explanation, sir. Yeah, absolutely. No, happy to help and go further on that if needed as well. All right, so how do I recommend submitting top lineups? So we don't recommend using projected score. And the reason for that is that we think that, creating lineups based on their average expectation, which is what projected score is doing, right? Is, this number you see here is the average that the player scores across all our sims. And then projected score is a sum of that number for each player. In DFS, you're trying to achieve, a top 0.1% outcome, top 0.01% outcome where you finish, ahead of thousands of other entries, right? The average is not going to do that for you. So if you're on the starter plan, right, your primary sorting metric is going to be Saber score here. And if you click into these, you could go to the Saber scores. You can click this eye icon on any one of these, and you can see what the formula is, right? So I just want to, to be clear, average projection is a part of Saber score, right? We understand it's important. You want your lineups to have a good floor. You want your lineups to have, this probably has correlation to cashing rates and things like that. Okay, yeah, projection is part of this, but we think that there are other variables that are important too. And the first one's going to be lineup upside, right? This is, how the lineup does in its top, in this case, 95th percentile. So that'd be the top 5% of the time. Like, how many points does this lineup achieve 5% of the time. And then that number goes into the formula because we're trying to get upside, right? We're trying to get into the top, I said 1%, top 0.1% of these contests, right? So we need to know how the lineup does at the high end. And then we have this other variable, a negative weight, super important, negative weight on this ownership variable, which we call adjusted ownership, right? So we're taxing lineups with high adjusted ownership, which is correlated to ownership, right? So we're, trying to avoid the highest owned lineups. We're trying to find lineups with good upside and lineups with a good floor, right? And we're balancing all three of these variables together. So this is why I always think Saber score will be superior to projected score alone, because it takes into projected score, but also takes into other important things to be aware of when you're playing DFS. So I would stick with Saber score if I had to choose between Saber score and projected. All right, good stuff there. And taking a peek in office hours here. Looks like we got a question on the way. So why don't we start a build demo here while we wait for a couple more questions to roll in. So let's go to refresh build. So we're going to open up brand new build here. 500 lineups, couple adjustments to projections here. Let's change this 500. I would always build as many lineups as your plan allows. I'm just doing 500 to save a little bit of time here. And I'd kick this off, right? While this runs, you could jump around SaberSim as you need, right? If you're playing multiple slates, if you're playing multiple sites, if you haven't uploaded your entries file, right? Good opportunity to come in here, upload this guy. Good opportunity to go run builds for maybe you're playing DraftKings main slate and the FanDuel main slate, right? There's a bunch of different ways you could spend this time to, shave off seconds here. So I'm going to go create manual contest sim. Say I'm going to do the $4.20 max here. I'm going to change the field to flagship just because this contest has a big prize pool. So all players in the lobby are going to have access to this. And I think flagship 20 max will represent it a little bit better. All right. It's going to go back to my build that we just kicked off. Got my contest sim set up. And lineups are finishing up now. Let's see if that other question came in. All right. Question did come in. So why don't we get that queued up while this gets sorted out. All right. Question from Drummer Boy. All right. Well, SaberSim gets sorted out over here. A question: in a scenario where I have heavily modified the exposures to teams, is it recommended that I modify the correlation slider to get better lineup results? Would not changing lead to the simulator being unable to make many lineups? So the more restrictions you put on the builder, it is possible that you end up building less lineups. Like say you need 5,000, right? And you put in, in a team stacks, a bunch of like minimax exposures, etc. It could lead to 2,500 lineups. It could lead to 3,000. It could lead to 1,780. You don't know, right? So typically I would just take what the builder gives you like on the back end there and just kind of roll with that as like your like effective pool, right? Second part is, do you need to modify the correlation slider? So in my opinion, I don't know what sport you're doing this for. I'm going to guess NHL, just because I don't think we're doing a ton of team stacks in NBA, and I don't think we're doing a ton of team stacks in NFL at the current, size of the slates here. So think about it like this, if you're accounting for correlation, then it is okay to lower the slider. Because the way I think about it is if the slider is accounting for correlation and I'm accounting for correlation, well, now the impact is going to be greater. But if I'm accounting for correlation, I don't need SaberSim to account for it as much, and I can lower the slider, right? And if this is like NHL, You know, you go and like look at like I think they're like 11 game slate tonight. And correlation's at 6, right? So like if I were doing this for NHL, you know, I come in here, I see that, hey, you know, correlation's at 6, but I'm setting up, you know, a bunch of min-max exposures, maybe like some stacking rules too. I'm accounting for correlation myself. I could probably lower the impact here, drop it, I don't know, 2 ticks, cut it in half, you know, something in like that range. So I would say yes, probably a good idea to lower correlation because you're kind of intervening for it. So you don't need as big of an impact. You don't need it to have as big of an impact on your lineup building process. So that'd be my thoughts there. All right, let's jump back to our NBA build demo here. And where are we at? So we built lineups. Lineups are loaded. Going to kick a contest sim. Going to sort by exposure. And lineups have run. Going to go to contest sims. If you uploaded an entries file, you don't have to do anything special here. It's auto switches to ROI. But because I'm using a manual, I have to go switch to the manual sim I have. All right. So I'm going to open up a couple of aggregate metrics here. Average projection, average ROIs, and ones I like. Sort by exposure again. And this is effectively like my baseline, right? All right, got an NFL question in the queue, but we will circle back to that. So this is like my baseline, you know, $4.20 max here, right? I like to have these exposure leverage columns visible for me, and then I like to start and adjust my min uniques, right? I'm going to jump here from 1 to 3. I think that should be like a totally fine thing, and we see ROI went down like 1% total here. Projection slightly moves a little bit more. ROI moves a little bit more. You know, you can start analyzing your leverages, your exposures. Hey, am I comfortable with the numbers I'm seeing? Still seeing like huge leverage to Jordan Poole. So maybe I want to, you know, go a little bit further. At 5, we have like a kind of a big jump here, right? With ROI. ROI goes down, you know, like 15%. But our Poole exposure also went down from like 75 to 40, and we're not super leveraged on him. So now, you know, I'm looking at my exposures and my leverages. Yeah, have I sacrificed some ROI? Yes. Have I sacrificed some projection? Yes. But these leverages are a lot flatter. I'm still taking a couple shots, but I'm not so overly leveraged in you know, as many places here. So I like this. I would probably stick with 5 here. 5 feels like a good number for me. If you want to go back to 4, if you want to take some shots, that's totally okay, right? So I would just do it exactly. You know, you got to figure out what number speaks to you and then, you know, settle on that number. But this is what you want to be thinking along the way, right? All right. Question from John. In NFL, is there a way to create a rule or filter where the QB and opposing defense aren't in the same lineup? Absolutely. So go to NFL. That's actually Sunday. NFL 2-game slate. So if you don't care if, you know, position players go against the defense, right? Which kind of makes sense here. And you only want to do quarterbacks. Like, hey, I just don't want quarterbacks specifically against my defense, right? What I would do is I would go to rules. I would go to add new rule. I would do group auto, change use to if. If at least one, group by team, we're going to leave quarterback checked only. Then use exactly 0 on the opposing team. We're only going to check defense. So what this rule is saying is that if a lineup has a quarterback, then use 0 defenses on the opposite team as that quarterback. So this rule right here will get you what you're looking for. All right. Good stuff there. Arson said, can you do FanDuel as well? Yeah, sure. So FanDuel, you know, it's really going to be the same between the sites, right? There's the only differences between the sites are really the scoring systems and the positions, right? For the players, salaries, etc., right? Values change, but workflow is the same, right? So, you know, the workflow is exactly the same, right? You set your lineups. One thing with FanDuel, you don't have to make 2 adjustments to projections to unlock lineups. That's only a DraftKings community guideline. But then again, build lineups, right? Go to the contest tab, upload your entry file. I'm just going to do a manual contest sim, right? I don't really want to do 150. Let's do 222, right? 25 max here. Okay, boom. I set this up, 25 max. Jump back to my build. And we'll let the build load. In the meantime, I'm going to take a sweep through office hours here. And looks like we are all caught up there, so that's good. It's hard to refresh this guy. All right, build loads, kick the contest sim, and then everything else is the same, right? Come in here, sort by exposure. Gonna move some columns around. Got my exposure, got my leverage, got my ROI, got my aggregate metrics, right? Nothing is different here. Because what changes, right? Well, like the salaries change, the scoring system changes, so projections change slightly, values change, but I'm leaving all that to SaberSim, right? The ownership changes, and I'm doing, my risk management. I'm doing my steps to check, my exposures and my leverages, and I'm doing those all the same, right? So here, then, I'm all set up, right? 20 lineups. Actually, it's 25. 25 lineups for my 25 max, right? Average projection, aggregate metric, ROI aggregate metric, exposure, leverage, sorting by exposure. Then I start bumping my min uniques, right? And then we see what number ends up being good, right? 4 hasn't moved my stuff too much. I go to 5. 5 looks a little more flat exposures, right? So highest exposed player is 60%, but all of my leverages highest is, or it looks like Curry just got ruled out. So highest exposure, like 25% to my top exposed player, which seems fine, right? So if I wanted to, I could go back to 4, right? And I save about 2.7 points in average projection by going from 4 instead of using 5, right? The only question is, am I comfortable with playing Jalen Johnson in 64% of my lineups, Harden in 68%, Andrew Wiggins in 64%, right? And, you got to just see, leverage, right, is exposure minus ownership. It's telling you which players you have more of than the field will on average. And those are effectively the players you're rooting for, because when they do good, they're going to help your lineups more than they're going to help the field, because a bigger share of your lineups is going to move up in the standings, right? So positive leverage are players that you're rooting for, and then negative leverage are players you are underweight on, or players you're rooting against, right? You don't want them to do good because you have less shares than the field. So you're just managing these, you're managing your risk, and you're going through the same steps regardless of the site here. All right. Good stuff there. We are all caught up with questions in the Office Hours channel and the YouTube chat. We've done build demos for both DK and FanDuel here. So I think we're going to wrap. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow for Office Hours and the Build Review Show on Friday. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.